the job is over. But unfortunately, that's not how things work. Writing a book is, I would say, just 30% or even 20% of the job. 70 to 80% of the job is what do you do after you write the book. So writing a book is somewhat similar to having your own startup. Let's say you have a idea, you build a prototype. To build that prototype, you need to find your audience. You need to actually sell your product to make the business viable. So similar is the case with literary entrepreneurship, where you essentially, no one really invests in you. Like traditional publishing is, like all these big houses like Rupa, Penguin, and all, they sort of invest millions in you for your branding and product. But if you're just starting off, you will not have such publishers chasing you. So then you have to define your own market and you have to prove your own worth first. So that is the typical route of literary entrepreneurship. You essentially write a product, write a book, and once you do that, you create your own marketing strategy, which could be on social media, it could be on offline media channels, it could also be on various fests. And essentially, the goal of the marketing activity is to make sure that you, as a product or as a brand, succeed in the market. So I was a part-time author. So this was like a part-time entrepreneurship gig that I had taken alongside my full-time work. So I've also closely been working with various startups. I've been working in a net tech startup, currently working in a fintech startup. I've done my MBA from Indian School of Business. So this is just a side gig that I sort of thought I will take. And the main, motivation for doing this was that, I thought that in college, everyone like you, everyone who's gone to college would, agree with me that you'll find each one of you being talented in something or the other. It could be, arts, it could be music, it could be, sports. But once you move out of, once you enter the professional world, this side of your personality tends to take a hit. It takes a backseat because then you are more focused on earning and making a living and all that. However, this part of personality, I personally believe, is something that adds a lot of flavor to you. It is very important to have this personality intact as well. And that is where I thought that, okay, now that I'm earning and I'm doing all the things that any average typical middle class person is supposed to do, but what about this side of my personality, which added a unique flavor to me in my college? Would I just simply, you know, uh, lose it, or would I sort of work towards it and create a niche for myself? Right. So if I understood your question correctly, you were asking me how would we balance this professional and creative side of us, right? Especially once we enter the professional journey. Am I right? Right. So that's a very good question, and I would say the long answer is everyone has to find their own path. The the short answer, sorry, the long answer would be that you have to first see that how do you spend your time. So it is actually similar to the excuse that people give for not following a healthy diet or not following an exercise regime, right? They say that they don't have time. Whatever thing is uncomfortable in our lives, be it exercise, be it following a disciplined life, or be it following a healthy lifestyle, we blame it on time. Whereas whatever things are not which are comfortable to us, let's say watching 40 minutes of Netflix daily, that we surprisingly have time for. So we need to first accept that no matter how busy we are in lives, no matter whether we have a 10-hour or an 8-hour or a 12-hour or 16-hour job, we can still find time to do things that matter to us, right? That is very important. So first you need to make yourself believe that yes, I have time. Now that you have made yourself believe that, now you need to also make yourself believe that these things are more important to me than spending time procrastinating or binge watching or whatever people do. Like, I mean, I'm surprised a lot of people say they don't have time. Like, you might agree with that, but The same people have watched the latest show of Game of Thrones. The same people have know what is happening in current affairs. The same people know who won the Premier League matches. So that's sort of like a paradox, that on one hand you don't have time for, let's say, if even if you spend like half an hour or 1 hour daily on your practice, which could be writing a book in my case, eventually after a couple of months you will have the final product in hand. So when you it's people always see the tip of the iceberg, right? Tip of the iceberg is what, that okay, I want to learn an instrument, or I want to write a book, or I want to lose weight. But in order to reach to that stage, you actually have to see what is at the bottom, right? And bottom is the uncomfort, the hustle that one has to make. So two things: one is you got to accept that no matter how busy you are, you have time in your life, right? Even PM Modi, who works at 20 hours a day, gets 1 hour daily for yoga, right? So who are we? Second thing is that once you understand that yes, you have time, you got to prioritize that. Okay, I have 1 hour daily that I can take time out. What do I want to do with that? Do I want to read something? Do you want to work on some instrument? Do I want to learn and we start writing that fiction novel I was thinking about? Or do I want to just chill? And that's completely fine. Like, it's not a bad thing to chill in life. It's not a bad thing to watch Netflix. But then you should not complain that I don't have time, that I don't have time to work on this startup idea that I had, or I don't have time to you know build the dream body that I wanted to build. I'm sorry, I didn't get your question. How did you what? Okay. So if I understood your question correctly, I'm sorry I'm repeating because there's some audio break at I don't know whose end. So how did I sort of get this thought of writing a book, and how did I go about it? Is that the question? Right. So like I mentioned to you that I was always into writing, but once I started working, I was like, why should I even write? Why should I spend time writing? Writing is not giving me any money. The work that is giving me money, that is good enough. And I used to spend my time, whatever free time I had, with friends and partying and all that. But then after a couple of months you sort of realize that money is not the only thing that matters in life, and that is after a couple of months I started realizing that that part of my personality, which had added so much flavor to me as a person, I had sort of become dull, had sort of going downhill. And that was upsetting for me because people talk. So if I go into the little scientific angle of this, people talk about equanimity, right? Like, if you read Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says you need to be an equanimous person to actually prosper in life. And what is equanimity? Equanimity, if you define scientifically, is you should be centered, and you will only be centered if you have a balanced left side and the right side of the brain. Now, when you're born, right, any child who's born is a very balanced person. Like, he has his left side of the brain or his right side of the brain is equally balanced. Now, as you grow up, use one side of the brain tends to sort of dominate. For, like, if you say artists and all, like, they have a very strong right side of the brain, which is the creative side. If you see, let's say chartered accountants or finance professionals, they have a very strong analytical mind, which is the left side of the brain. However, both sides have their own pros in terms of what positive effect they bring in life. They have their own downsides. Like, if you become very too much right sided, then you tend to go into depression. You have a lot of anxiety attack, and that is why you will observe that people who are artists, right? Most of these people, they have this notion, they have this tendency of easily slipping into depression. Whereas if you are very very left sided, then you sort of become panicky. You get you get moody, you get angry. You don't you sort of lack that EQ, emotional quotient, that is very important to prosper as an individual, not just professionally but as well as personally. So it is very important to have both of them centered. Now, as I was in the analytics domain, working as an analyst in a company. So I was doing well for myself. I was, but this right side of the brain was something which I was not you know uh, feeding. And since I had been doing that consciously in college, I knew how I was feeling, what kind of conversations I was having, and there was a difference when that side of the brain was lacking nourishment. So writing for me was a fuel to give that nourishment to them. And I always thought that what should I do to take it to the next level. Like, let's say if I start a blog, right, today I might write, then after 1 month I won't write. Like, there's no pull for me, right? So like, you might have seen a lot of blogs where people write once a year. I mean, that's not consistency. That is just random ramblings of your mind. But if you take a challenge of writing a book, right, then that requires certain discipline, that requires immense consistency, because now you're talking about 40-50,000 words, not just 500 words. So that is the reason I took it, because so that I can stay consistent on it. Like, if I just write a blog, then I don't think I can be consistent enough. But if I take a challenge of writing a book, I'll have to be consistent enough to write the book. Plus, like I mentioned, that 30% of the 70% of the work actually begins post writing the book. I'll have to be consistent even post that to make the book a success. So that was my intention. That the philosophy that I'm sort of proposing here, since I believe in it completely. So, I mean, simply if I tell you that this is what you should do instead of without doing it myself, then I sound like a fool. So first, I wanted to do what I believed in, and once I did, then I thought, this, yes, this is something that really works. Because once that side of the brain, that side of my personality was again rechanneled, I saw immense success in even my professional world. So that's in fact counterintuitive, right? Like, you might think that, okay, I'm spending 2-3 hours daily on something which is not related to my work, while whereas my, let's say, my colleague might be learning an Excel or some course which could directly influence his work. So you might just say that that person might just progress faster than compared to me in the professional world. But that did not happen. I climbed the ladders of corporate hierarchy. I became, my, whatever you define, at the professional realms from success. I got each and every part of that without compromising on this part of the personality. That is because if you have a centered brain, if you're creative enough, it is bound to impact your professional life as well. It is a myth that only your technical or your skills are enough. Like, most of it depends on your soft skills, and when you have a very sound centeredness in your personality, then you can stay calm and composed. You can uh, act on everything by first thinking about it rather than just reacting. You can, instead of being reactive, you can be proactive, and that creates a huge difference. Yeah, so it might be lockdown, but I am working like 15-16 hours a day, so I have a job. So my productivity hasn't gone down. In fact, has only increased, because now I have a lot of time for myself. Like, earlier, a lot of time used to I used to spend a lot of time traveling. And even if you like, even in office, like, there's a lot of time that goes in just sitting and meeting and all that. Whereas now, even that time is saved so easily. I think on an average, anyone who has been working has saved at least 3-4 hours every day due to lockdown. So if you take a cumulative effect of that, I mean, in a month, you are spend in a month, you're saving 120 hours, right? And that is equivalent to 5 days. So every month you're saving literally 5 days because of lockdown. So that's actually a blessing in disguise, right? So, I mean, if you think of it like that, whatever you wanted to pursue, you can easily pursue. So, like, when the lockdown started, I sort of I was into poetry. I'd written a poetry book as well. Now I wrote some more poems on different emotions that any person goes through in their during their teenage life, and that those poems were a huge hit. A lot of people commented, and a lot of people wanted to wanted me to personally share it with them. And so yeah, I mean, from writing aspect, that was one thing I did. I got into poetry. But otherwise, I just feel that any incident that happens in life, be it lockdown, every cloud has a silver lining, right? So while you can always crib about economy going down, or jobs not being stable, and various other issues that you're facing, you can always think on the other side as well, that oh, now nature has got a break. And if you see the air quality, it's improved drastically. And like, that is from a macro economic level. But if you want to be selfish and only think about yourself, then also you will be blessed only that you're saving 5 hours like I said, 4 hours a day, which is like essentially 5 days a month. And if you're saving so much time, I mean, you can easily do whatever you wanted to do, like 5 days a month. And already I think they're in fourth or fifth month of lockdown, right? So that is essentially 25 days that we have had, where we literally had to do nothing. So 25 days if I give to anyone, is like this is like, you calculate yourself. But if I, let's say, today tell you bluntly that you don't have to do 25 days for anything related to work, you can do whatever you want, be it your physical goals or your creative goals, or just watching all your favorite TV shows, you would be happy, right? You wouldn't complain. So why would you complain now? That's my short 2 cents. Yeah. So if I understood the question correctly, who inspired me to become an author, right? Yeah. So it's actually my own mediocre life that inspired me to become an author. Now, when I say mediocrity, I don't mean that, like I said, I was doing well, I was earning well, I was doing all things, I was having all those tick marks that any person in their 20s would have in their professional life. But I would still say mediocre, because what is the difference between me and that? Like, okay, everyone knows I am great in this work. Everyone knows, let's say, my boss is great in that work. But outside office, what identity do you have, right? You might be earning 50 lakhs a month, but outside office, like outside, what you are doing, do you have an identity? Do people, like, if let's say I was great in what, let's say I was even vice president of let's say some bank, would I have been invited for this show? No, because my identity is something which is very common, like, right? So I wanted to build an identity for myself which is very unique. Like today, if I introduce myself to anyone, I can talk about 100 things about myself which is unique. I don't have to just talk about work, which anyhow people talk about. Someone who's running a, let's say, cab, or someone who is riding a auto rickshaw, or someone who's working as a VP, they're all doing it to sustain themselves, right? So what is so unique about that? You got to build something which is very unique. And for me, that was, writing was a vehicle to build that unique identity. So if I understood your question correctly, you have given me a scenario where someone is working in an IT job, but he is equally passionate or talented in, let's say, a sports or some sort of an art, but he is some for some reason he's not pursuing that right now. So my what would I advise to such a person? Right, I have seen many people like that, and I'm sure you might have also seen many people like that. So my advice to them would be, that everything is temporary in life. So like today you are working here, tomorrow you would be working, you know, in some other company, right? To like today, okay, fine, you might be saying that I am busy because of five meetings lined up this month. Tomorrow you will say I'm busy because of 10 meetings lined up, next month. So, and these are like, nothing is permanent in life, right? So today you are stuck up with this boss, tomorrow you'll be stuck up with that boss, and every day you will have an excuse. However, things like, this these art, like let's say if you decide to somehow spend some hours daily on your musical instrument and compose some songs, and let's say end up making a YouTube channel and upload that, these things will never go. So even at your deathbed, at let's say you're 80 years old and you're just recording all the experiences you had in life, you will not think about what you were, which company you were working at the age of 27 or 28. You will not think about how much money you were earning. You will not think about why your boss was so toxic or so nice to you. You will only be very, very proud of yourself that yes, even today, even after I die, I am leaving some memories of myself, and through my, let's say, artwork, which be it your books or your music or even sports. Like people remember all the great sportsmen, right? But even if let's say you reach the echelons of any corporate ladder, let's say you become the MD, how many people remember? Do you know who's the MD of HDFC Bank or any other bank? But right, who was the captain of Indian cricket team? So I'm not saying that you should not have professional goals. You should aim for the best. But I am saying, and I'm actually challenging here, that aiming for the best professionally is actually going to be better if you have some creative passion in your life. And it could be as simple as cooking. I'm not saying be some sort of a rock star. Like just spend some time daily, could be 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, doing gardening, doing anything that you love, collecting stamps or painting. A lot of everyone has something, right? Which everyone has that something which gives them a unique identity. So what your question, if I'm understanding correctly, is if I was not an author, if I was not some IT professional, what would I have been doing, right? So again, that's a good question, and my answer is I really, really don't plan my life. Like I said, even this author thing or whatever, I believe in instincts, right? So I'm not a person who has planned that. Okay, what should I be this by 30 years? I should do that, and by 35 years I should do that. I go by instincts. I believe that the gut feeling of anyone cannot be wrong if especially if that person is into spirituality. So I would tell everyone who is watching here to also meditate daily, because meditation improves your intuition like anything. And if you have a very strong intuition, right, I personally think my intuition has really helped me in my life. Whatever decisions I've taken at crucial junctures where it was like a make or a break decision have mostly turned out to be ones that have uh, you know been instrumental in my journey so far. So I don't have any plan that I would have been this or that or that. I would just say that just do your work. I mean, Satya Nadella once said that just keep your head down and do your work. Don't be influenced by external noises. Don't listen to any motivational gurus. Every motivational guru has their own, is basically selling their work, right? If some motivational guru is uploading a video, he's not doing it to motivate you. He's doing it so to get likes and to get comments, so that his brand improves. So everything that is happening, right, just think what personal agenda it could have, right? And what and how do you make sure that you are not affected by it? You just do your work, right? You don't think too much, what would I do, what is my goal. You just do what you're supposed to do right now. If you right now you're working as a company, if you're working as you do work. After, let's say, you've completed your work, you have free time, you then decide, okay, right now I can do this or that. Just take it, you know, take life as it goes by. That's what I would say. No, so I was working as an analyst. That was my first job. Then I was working as a vice president of an edtech startup, and then again I'm in a senior management position in a fintech startup. So I guess, but your question remains the same. How has the experience been? I mean, I'm sorry, I didn't get your question. Well, so my experience has been great. I believe that, you know, uh, it's very important that you perform to your best capabilities during your work, because, just understand from the standpoint of your manager or the founder, right? uh, just understand that he's under so much pressure himself, that, you know like, the stakes are always high. As you climb up the ladder, we always think that, why is my boss cribbing, why is he so angry with me, right? But you got to understand that as you climb up, life becomes even more tough. And if you might have seen if you might have read or seen any autobiography of any famous business person, Steve Jobs, for example, you will see that kind of politics that happens at the board level. So if you understand from that point of view, then it becomes easier to sort of take whatever a typical average employee would say, brickbats or negativity, and you got to just work at your burst potential. Like, imagine if some servant comes to your house. If he doesn't work properly, obviously you will scold him, right? So similarly, I mean, things don't change. It's just that you are not a servant at a house. You are basically serving your company. So you got to work at your full potential. You got to give your best. But at the same time, you don't have to go all guns blazing and lose your mind. Like, a lot of people, I think, lose their mind and with unnecessary politics and uh, trying to sort of navigate their way through unethical means. My only advice would be to just same thing that I repeated a couple of minutes back. Just keep your head down and work. Just work. I mean, the beauty of sleeping after a hard day's work is much better than the beauty of sleep after wasting the entire day. Like, you can take 2 days. Today, from morning to night, you can just, let's say, chill. You can watch Netflix all the day and then try to sleep. You will have a very disturbed sleep. You will be like, what am I doing in life? Next day, again, you just focus on the present moment and you work like whatever you're working on, your business idea or your company or whatever. You work till you are extremely tired, and then you sleep. You will have such a sound sleep. So what does that say? That says that we are actually, I mean, human body is built to do work. It's not built to do, just relax. So so like I said, as and when you sort of get too obsessed with something, let's say you get very maybe attached would be a slightly better word than obsessed. As and when you get attached to something, you sort of spend a lot of your time there. So, like, generally, like, biologically, we have a both centered brain. But due to surroundings, due to external environment, due to peer pressure, we sort of might get attached to something. Let's say it is professional success, or it could be money, it could be your even your whatever artwork you have, right? So due to these things, you tend to lose that equanimity. Now, the easiest way to build that equanimity is to make sure that you spend at least 10 minutes, 15 minutes daily on something that you like. It could be, like I mentioned, anything. It could be as simple as gardening. And if you have, even if you feel there's no such thing that you are very passionate about, then you should definitely exercise and meditate daily. Exercise and meditation are two sort of medicines that will make sure that you have, you know you never sort of lose that equanimity, because ultimately the root cause of this non-equanimity is stress. So every day, the stress that we accumulate, that builds up, right? Obviously, it's not like as we breathe out we are releasing stress as well. The stress that is there is getting accumulated, so it needs to have some way to vent. It needs to have some channel to go out, right? So it could be writing for some people, it could be anything, it could be music for some people, it could be simply spending time with your pet dog for half an hour for some people, right? But what I'm saying is, there are two, as for me, there are two medicines that can work for anyone, like, which is exercise and meditation. So if you are spending an hour on meditation and exercise daily, then I am 100% sure that you will never face this problem of I mean, I'm not saying you will become saint, you will be like, oh, there's no stress happening. But what I'm saying is, you will never lose your core centeredness. And what I mean by that is that you will never sort of break down. You will never be at a point that you don't know what's happening in life. You will, let's say today you had a very stressful day. You will realize that at the end of the day, today is going to be different from tomorrow, and tomorrow is going to be different from day after tomorrow. So this is just a temporary phase of life. You will be very, very sort of you will change your perspective of success and failure. You will be very different. Like earlier, what might used to happen, and that used to happen with me also. It's not like I was like this from the beginning. That once I receive some accolades, or you know some sort of praise, I would feel very happy, and then I would consistently crave for it, and that craving made me unhappy. Whereas, let's say if someone scolded me or did not praise my work, then again I used to get very unhappy. So these, you understand, these are very, very extreme emotions: extreme happiness and extreme displeasure. These are very extreme emotions. Why? So when someone praises you, just understand, okay, fine, just acknowledge it, be happy about it, but don't go over the moon, because that tomorrow the same person might just tear you apart. There's So I think it's the beauty of impermanence. The impermanence is the rule of life, and I think the way to realize that is through these activities. I'm sorry, if I understood your question correctly, you want me to explain what the three books are. What are they about? Right. So my first book is titled One Last Time, and it is a very unconventional tale of friendship between an urban and a rural, teenager. So basically, this person is one person is sort of a rich, spoiled brat from Delhi, and the other person has been born and brought up, in a very famished conditions from a village. So the story is essentially about when they both meet, what sort of changes they bring in each other's life. For example, I mean, just to give you some hints and some teasers, then this particular person from Delhi, he develops a lot of humility in his life. Like earlier, he used to crib even at the drop of a hat. Now here he had gone to his village and there was no electricity in the evening, and there was no Domino's pizza, there was nothing. And but still, when he met this guy and he realized that he's so happy in doing such small things in life, just like helping his father in farming, in spite of having such a poor childhood, it brought a lot of uh, humility in him. Whereas this other person, he essentially saw this guy, and talking about technology and so many things, and got inquisitive himself that okay, there's a lot more to this world than merely agricultural stuff. And he started dreaming. Earlier he never used to dream because he never met anyone who had those kind of means. Here was a boy who was brought up in extremely good family, and was raised in a very good school, had proper education. So the kind of personality he had, he sort of wanted to imbibe that. So the rest of the book talks about what happens post that. The second book is titled Letters in the Rain, and it's essentially again a book about this guy who used to think that there's nothing in life except studies and being academically bright and being professionally bright. He was very goal and success and goal oriented, and he was a very big social misfit, so to say. And then there was this other person who was extremely bad in studies, but she was extremely passionate about music. And these two were supposed to form a team in some college project. And then essentially, again, the book talks about what happens in their lives when they understand each other's ideologies and philosophies. How do they sort of transform each other? The third book is a book of it's a book on poetry, so it's called The Search Within. And as the title suggests, it talks about the search inside you. Like, what are you essentially searching for when you're feeling pain, when you're feeling anger? I mean, how do you sort of you know uh, sort of bring that emotion? How do you transform that emotion? How do you transform an emotion of rage into an emotion of creativity? How do you transform destruction to creation? So, and the book essentially talks about problems that any person who's in their 20s goes through, be it related to career, love, you know breakup, or success, failure, all these things. So it's a book that, I mean, I would say is like I mean you can say it's a life sutra. It's my sort of my tribute to how grateful I have been and how blessed I have been that life has taught me so many lessons so far. So it shares about my lessons, what I've learned through third person narratives, through some poetry and prose. I'm sorry. I could hear something about startup, but I could not hear your question properly. Right, right, right. So, yeah, sure. So before my MBA, I was like the startup. I think you were talking about the tech startup. We were essentially working on building a platform where we could help students from all parts of India get access to scholarships. So in India, you might be very shocked to hear this, but there is more than 19,000 crore worth of scholarships that are launched every year. However, most of the scholarships do not reach or are not being accessed by the students from the last mile, from underprivileged communities, because of lack of awareness. So we had essentially built an artificial intelligence based technology, which was Series A funded and also awarded globally as the top two edutech technologies of the world by Capgemini, essentially through which these students from rural and last mile connectivity, they could get access to scholarships and they could actually fulfill their educational dreams, their educational aspirations through these financial aid that government readily provides. Well, the thought was raised because, like the founders, I was not the founder. The founders, one of the founders, was from a very, he was from a very humble background, and his father had sort of, he had lost his father at a very tender age, due to which he was the only person who could complete his education on time among the entire family of five siblings. So he when he got aware, when he was researching about this, he realized that had he known about those scholarships, he could have got, because he was academically very bright. He was this typical 100 percentile student with all A's. So there was no doubt that he could have got those scholarships had he been aware of. And had he got those scholarships, his elder brother, who completed his education 5 years down the line, could have completed on time. So, and he was still, fairly well to do. So he thought that if he has faced the situation, what about people who are from extremely, rural areas? There, the situation would be 100 times worse. And hence, this idea was conceptualized. What is my ideal? I'm sorry. Can you repeat? What is my ideal forward? What is the word that you said? Superpower. Okay. Right. Okay. I mean, I'll just rephrase that question because that makes me sound like some next level person. But I would say, I mean, what is my ideal, maybe secret sauce, which has helped me get all these different aspects of so-called, success things. But so I would say my ideal secret sauce. I mean, and this I'm saying comparing myself with my peers, and how they behave and how I behave, is I am always you know I'm not easily influenced by what is happening around. So let's say if I am supposed to do complete a chapter of my book, then suddenly I get a call from my friend that let's party, or let's there are five people who are joining in this club, let's join, let's enjoy. uh, I would not do that, because I have a plan. I have a goal that that I want to complete my book by next 2 months. So come what may, I will stick to it. What and that I think my ideal secret sauce is being persistent, perseverance. That luckily, and it's not that I have consciously developed this. I think luckily I am like this as a person only, that I don't get influenced easily. Like if let's say today there is a great TV series that is launched, within a week it gets, let's say, 9.5 IMDb rating. Everyone is talking about it. There is a sort of a peer pressure that, oh, let me watch it, let me see, let me also talk about it, right? I also want to contribute in social media and in my circle, that who killed whom and all that. I would not do that. I would be like, damn you, and that is because I know that once my product is ready, once my whatever I am envisaging, once that is ready, then people will talk about my work. So, there are. I mean, there's a very, I would say, a little rude quote that I read recently, which is actually true. It's a brutal truth. It could be sort of it can offend a lot of people, but it's a very brutal truth that there are two types of people in this world. One are the people who congratulate, and then there is other type who receive the congratulations. So what uh, kind of person would you like to be? Would you like to be someone who is congratulating everyone, or would you like to be someone who wants to receive congratulations for a lot of things? So I would want to be the latter person, and for that I would want to be uh, mentally not available for a lot of things that happen in this happening around you, which demand your time. You know, with the advent of social media, with the advent of digital technology, everyone wants to grab your attention, right? every any YouTube video you want, you watch, anything that you do on your phone is nothing but a tool to grab your attention. Now when you are watching something, when you are spending time on something, the only person who is learning is that the person who's, you know, made that video, who is the only one whose motive is getting met. You have just contributed, you are one of those 10 lakh views. He doesn't even give a shit about you. So why would you, you know, do that? You could rather focus on your goals, right? You could rather focus on yourself. So I mean, to cut the long story short, my secret sauce, that's totally my opinion, would be, I'm not very bothered about what's happening. I'm just bothered about what I am supposed to do. Yeah, like I answered, I mean, I don't plan. So that question, I don't think is that relevant. I mean, so, and the reason I won't answer that is, if you would have asked me, you know, 5 years ago, where do you see yourself? I would have never said I would write a book. I would have never said I would get into, you know, different things. I would have never said I would get into motivational speaking. I would have never said, I would have probably said I want to have my bank balance up to this level. So I don't know, tomorrow I might just get into something which is totally different, right? It's totally, I mean, I think life is a journey, life is a very fun ride, and everyone should just enjoy it rather than having these goals. Because once you have this 5 year 10 year goal, I mean, you always sort of get too hard on yourself to push you for that. Now let's say my goal, let's say I tell you my goal is to become, have 10 books written. Now, if I am not able to do that because of whatever reason, maybe I'm no longer interested in it, maybe I'm interested in something else, but unnecessarily I'm pushing myself because, oh, I have committed to myself. And then if I break it, if I say, then let's chuck it, let's have some different goal, then again I am sort of subconsciously telling myself that I don't have a strong willpower. So, I mean, I can answer you what are my short term goals. I can answer you what is my goal in the next 1 or 2 months, which is my, which I always do. I always have short term, one month, 2 months, because I don't think I will drastically change as a person in 2 months. But in 5 years, I don't know. I mean, I don't even know if we will survive because of COVID. Hello. Okay. If I understood your question correctly, one small quote from my side, right? So one small quote from my side, and this is from my latest book actually, is your the greatest enemy in your life is not your external surroundings. The greatest enemy in your life is your mind, your own mind. So before blaming your situation on third party, think about how many times your mind has told you to do something and you did it, realizing that it is not the good thing for you. Think about how many times mind told you, okay, let me just relax today, and you ended up wasting the time. Then why would you blame your job? Why would you blame your boss if you are not controlling your own mind? A person who has controlled, who has defeated his own mind, who has, you know, achieved dominance over his mind, who can tell his mind that shut up, I am going to do whatever I want, come what may. He can do unimaginable things in life. Thanks a lot, Planetech Media, for having me. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Thanks a lot.